let me just do a quick introduction to everybody. My name is Brendan Buffler. I lead our research computing and research cloud organization over here in Europe. So today is really, the discussion today is really about Ronin, and so I'm only going to say a few short words. This is the place where we see the cloud having the most impact in day-to-day research, and it's really, it's as old as the scientific model, the scientific method itself. But, when we look at where people are getting stopped or slowed down in their research cycle, what we see is that largely it's access to IT resources that are the right shape and size and the right capacity for them at the time, as and when they need it. That is actually the thing where we believe that we can have the most impact. Standing in a queue for several months or even several hours or days to get access to an HPC resource that may or may not be the right shape and size of resource, but it's the resource that's there that's got the scale that they need. To us, that seems like a crazy idea if we know that we can do a better way. And of course, we do think that we have a better way. So the business of scaling from a desktop to something the size of a cluster is, it's a well-studied phenomenon around the world. Most researchers need something a bit bigger than their laptop, and occasionally they need stuff that's a lot bigger than their laptop. They also need places to curate their data and then attack it with, any kinds of resource that, or type of workload that might come up from time to time. We do think that, in particular, we agree with Greg Wilson from the software carpentry movement that there's a huge gap between the people who use supercomputers for a living, which is maybe 5% or 10% of the research population, and the other 80 or 90% who are just struggling to send, to email spreadsheets to each other. And do fairly, low-level stuff. And so there's that gap in the middle that we think desperately needs closing. And to close that gap, the best way to close that gap is we need to bring sophisticated software tools like we have in the cloud, but in a much more consumable form to deliver to the end researchers. So with that, of course, that really leads us into this discussion with Nathan today. Nathan, who's the CEO and head nerd at the Ronin Cloud. I guess just the last thing to say, Nathan was one of the early participants in the Research Cloud program, which is a program that we run at Amazon to make sure that researchers understand how they can use the cloud to solve that missing middle, and then also to scale up to, really crazy big things if that's what they need to do. So we have a book called The Researcher's Handbook. Ronin is well and truly represented in that book, and this is really our view of how we think research computing should be done in the cloud. But what Nathan's going to show you today is pretty amazing stuff, and we think it's it's quite groundbreaking because it's a really customer obsessed tool that solves a lot of the problems that researchers are having when it comes to grappling with the cloud. So with that said, over to you, Chief Nerd, and
okay.
I'll leave it to you and I'll shut up.
All right, thanks Brendan. For everyone who's on the call, my name's Nathan Albrighton. I am the founding father of the Ronin platform that we've put together. We come up with this idea while we were helping automate CSIRO in Australia's internal infrastructure. We saw a common theme of researchers needing resources, and we saw also a common theme of researchers having to become DevOps and SysOps specialists to actually start research. And we thought, being DevOps and SysOps specialists, we could shortcut this by a long way and get researchers, students, professors and teachers closer to that endpoint in a much quicker fashion, much cleaner delivery. So when we actually decided to create Ronin, what we did first was log on to the Amazon portal, and we're met with this. This is the bar, and this bar gets higher and higher that researchers actually have to jump over these days. Every single time AWS have an Amazon event in Vegas, this grows by 20 to 50 new specialist items and services. Now, it wasn't so long ago in IT that people could actually just specialize. They could specialize on single items out of this list. You could go your whole career and just concentrate on databases or be a database admin and only know a few SQL commands that will carry you right through to retirement. Now, researchers actually have to know a little bit about everything. They need to know, when you want to get a server up and running, you need to know about security groups, networking, SSH keys, storage, operating systems. You need to know the lot to actually even get started. So what we thought, there must be a much simpler way for us to be able to get researchers to that point. So what we did is we built Ronin. And now this is our attempt at making that problem a much simpler one when it comes to researchers self-servicing and getting to that point sooner. So when we log into Ronin, what we land on is the project screen. Now, we noticed while we were working in large research organizations that this was how most things were organized. It was by project. Your funding, your grants come by project. The people you collaborate with was by project. So we thought we'd take the same approach to how you actually consumed AWS services. So when you log into Ronin, what you get is a list of the projects that you have access to. And if you click any one of these, we'll go into the Mars project. Now, on the Mars project, as soon as you log in, you'll notice if you've ever used the AWS dashboard itself, you'll notice that this is about 10 to 11 screens worth of information. As we go through the items here, we've got a quick summary and a mission statement of what the project is. On the top right-hand side here, though, we've got one of our top requested items, and it is cost visibility. So what you're able to do with Ronin is set a budget and track that budget in multiple ways to make sure that you can get the best value for money out of your budget. You might be trying to save money by running your AWS resources as lean as possible, but you might also be trying to maximize the output that comes from it and then getting the most out of the budget that you have for a period of time. Down beneath that, you can see we've got 0 running machines, we've got 1 stopped, and we've got the current cost of such a thing. So this is the magic trick that the public cloud or AWS does that your internal infrastructure doesn't. And it's as often as you give back resources that you're not using, they're for free. The machines are actually free. Now, we try to promote that type of behavior in that these machines are instant. Amazon always has the resources you need to actually spin them up whenever you need them. But when you don't need them, we try to promote best practice behavior of giving back those resources so that you're not paying for them. So you don't end up with your budget running away in the night. Down below that, we've got the storage. So we've got a summary of all the storage for this project here. Now, just to give you an idea of how much nicer we've made this, this is the EC2 volumes tab. And this account here only has it has 3 people who use this account. Now you can imagine what this looks like after you get 100 people, right? Or you get 1,000 people using an account. You're searching with volume IDs and random strings of text effectively, and you're trying to link that together to make sense across those 10 to 15 screens. What we've done is make sure that you know where all the volumes are and all the resources are for this project. We want your Amazon account to be completely auditable end to end. There are no resources that go into the AWS account without projects, project codes, owners, timeframes, the lot. So down the bottom here, you'll also notice we've got some dollar values on the resources that we have. Now, twice a month, Amazon release their EC2 costing data. It's currently at 190,000 rows of EC2 pricing information. And what we do is make that consumable for humans. So we get that and we link that to these resources after we've rounded them up for you inside your project. So we're just trying to make it so at all times you have enough information to get the best you possibly can out of the Amazon platform. Now, that's the dashboard explained fairly quickly. What I'll just mention before we get into the spinning up resources in the Amazon platform is with every Ronin that we install for any university, research organization, or a business, you get a collaboration stack. You get the Atlassian collaboration stack completely configured and automated underneath as well. So when you create the Mars project and you get ready to kick off this project, you actually get a fully configured Jira underneath. So you can immediately start assigning tasks and collaborating with your colleagues. You also get a wiki. So in here, you also have a place to actually document the things that you're doing, document your project, store anything else, any reference things that you might need to. And you also get a product that we've included called Questions. Now, Questions we've added because we think this adds a lot of value to what we do with Ronin. This product here is much like if anyone's done anything with code or anything with servers, they've found themselves on Stack Overflow looking for an answer that somebody has worked out before you, so you can actually make it through to the next step of whatever you're configuring. So what we've done is provided a facility here that will help promote community-driven support within your organization. So we want the ability for people to share weird and wonderful things that they've put together without that being the unfair question to your service desk who have no idea what you've created. We want an ability for users of the thing that you've shared to find you and you be able to answer them. And if you've got a lot of power users, they'll start to answer these questions themselves and vote answers up and down. So what we wanted is to make sure we had enough pieces here to actually support something that is a very quick to share and collaborate type cloud tool. Now, if we go back to the dashboard, what we can do is go and we'll get straight into creating a brand new server on the Amazon platform from scratch as a user. So on the left-hand side, we've got our machines menu and we've got the create a new machine. Now, this is our workflow for actually keeping things as simple as possible with as little technical jargon in here as possible. We want you to be able to specify quite technical things, but without drowning you in the technical jargon to get there. Now, at the very top, we've got 5 of the top requested research operating systems. These operating systems are the latest that are available by Amazon. We don't do anything to these operating systems that make them specifically Ronin. All of the things that you do inside Ronin, we want to be industry standard so that they're portable for you. We want you to be able to collaborate with other organizations. We want you to be able to use the resources that you fire up here in other environments if you need to, or in other AWS accounts if you need to split away from the main organizational one. Down the bottom, you'll notice we've actually got pre-configured software. Now, the top one, project packages, I'll come back to this. For the other actual images we've got here, we got the top requested pre-built sort of scenarios that have come through from our users. So we've got our studio server here, which was a very common request. It's a very popular tool, but it's also quite hard to configure if you're new to cloud computing. We've got Elsa's Flight. Now, Elsa's Flight is a product that we love. It's one of the fastest ways, or I think it is the fastest way to actually get yourself a HPC node of your very own. So we wanted to have this option inside Ronin in case you had a shared resource where you were lined up in a HPC queue and you weren't able to get the wall time. We wanted you to have an option so that your research didn't have to stop. You're able to actually fire up a HPC node, which we'll do in a sec, and you're able to be the only person in your queue. And you can choose the the machine that actually suits whatever you're doing. Beneath that, we've got the deep learning machines that Amazon themselves support. Now, these we find are some of the quickest ways to actually get started with deep learning and machine learning. These packages have the NVIDIA CUDA libraries. It has TensorFlow. It has all of that stuff pre-installed and configured for you to actually get started with that line of research. Now, while we were in Singapore last week, we actually talked to a couple of genomics labs, and NCBI BLAST come up. We added this in an afternoon because just to show the flexibility here when it comes to how Ronin is compatible with all of the AMIs and products that are on the marketplace currently, and any of the community ones that you might have access to as well. So you can extend this list for your organization to suit whatever types of focus you have, or depending on what sort of research that your organization does. And down the bottom, we've got Docker as well, because it was just one of the top requested items. So if I select one of these, so we'll go with a pre-configured one, and we'll go with Elsa's flight first. So we're going to spin up a HPC node of our very own. If I go to address, now this is where we've done our best to make networking as easy as possible. We think that networking is the worst part of cloud computing, or the hardest part rather. So if I type in an address, what Ronin does is check to see if that endpoint is available. Ronin manages your top level domain, and it also takes care of all of the networking on this machine. As soon as I click select, so you'll see on the right-hand side, what's happening is we're building a loadout. This looks like, or is very familiar to a shopping cart, effectively. So you can see the products that you're selecting as you go through. So with a couple of keystrokes and a click of the button, we've actually saved you quite a bit of time learning about subnets, ports, network management, all of that sort of stuff that you might need to actually start with an Elsa's flight machine. If I go to machine type, at the very top, we've got the 3 recommended sort of general purpose machines if you are just logging into Ronin to see if your software would run or to configure your software. So you want a cheap machine whilst you get everything ready, but you want the flexibility to actually go to a large machine when you're ready to run your workload in anger. So if I go through here and we select a machine, it is very, very easy to change our mind. So underneath the 3 that we recommend, we've got the other, I think we're getting close to 90 odd different types of machines all grouped up. So if you run this the first time round and you decided, oh, I need more memory or more compute, it's very, very easy for you to actually change the machine that you run up. So if we go through here, we say, look, we needed more CPUs. If you select that on the right-hand side, your loadout is changing as well. Now, if we go to storage, actually, I'll get a larger one. We'll go, just choose a larger machine. So we'll go to that. When you go to the storage tab, we wanted storage to feel as simple as shopping for hard drives at the local electronics store. At the top, again, we've got the recommended sort of size and price points for people who are just looking for a hard drive to attach. And down the bottom, you've got the choices throughout the different storage types. Now, if you need to drill down on any of the specs on anything in the Ronin interface, we've actually got those here as well. So you can actually go through and check to see what the performance is, and the attributes of these items. But we didn't want to drown new users in information with that. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly grab an extra 10 gig volume. Now, with Ronin, we do a few nice things for new users as well. So when you attach raw hard drives like we just did, so when we selected a 10 gig SSD, when you log into the Elsa's flight machine, that volume will be mounted, it'll be partitioned, and it'll be ready for use. So we do a handful of little things to just make the cloud computing experience a little smoother for people who are just starting out here or are focused on research, not on SysOps and DevOps. So we've got everything we need here. If we click the launch, we now get into a point where we're managing the SSH key to access the machine. So here we can see keys that we've already created. If I need to create a brand new one, so we've got our Mars project, if I go with rover, Mars rover, and we generate a new key, that downloads the private key and leaves the public key ready to be inserted on the machine. And it's as easy as giving the key a name. that's already selected. We can actually launch that machine with that key, but what I'll do is I'll just select one that's installed on this box. If we decide we need to clean any of these up, or we are making our resources secure, you can see we've got lots of editable things around here too, so you can actually delete these keys when you need to as well. So if we go and launch that machine, that's all we had to do to launch our very own HPC node. If I wasn't explaining all of the tabs, you usually have change in 2 to 3 minutes end to end for any size HPC node that you're looking for as well. So if we actually wanted to launch another one of the exact same size and shape, what we can do is just click here and go through and just give it a new endpoint. So the last one was Alsys, so we'll go Alsys 2. And if we hit select, we've got our launch back because that's all we need. And we can choose the same key again. We can go desktop, launch machine. And we've launched a second HPC node. I'll just quickly go back. So if we go back to the launch configuration again, and we decide we want something else in our workflow, so something similar, but of a different sort of type, we'll go with a Docker host this time around. Call it something like that. Go select. And just say for our Docker host, we don't need so much compute. So we can choose the different, choose something else this time around. So we'll go with a memory machine instead, with something with a little bit more memory. And we'll launch that one as well. Now, we've only seen the key management on this side. When you launch a Windows box, we help with the password management as well. So username password management, so you can RDP to the box. So remote in. So if we go to NATO Desk and launch that machine. Now I'll just head across and we'll just check to see how those machines that we've just created are coming together. Now, when you click this button, it takes you to the machine summary page. This screen here is closer to 15 screens worth of information. It's actually got some information here that doesn't exist in the Amazon panel as well. So it's stuff that we can work out because we were there at the point of creation, but make sure that you understand as you manage your research environment. So for the Mars project, we can see very quickly, we've got 4 servers here. We can very quickly see the storage that's attached and the storage size. Everything here as well is point and shoot. We want this to be as comfortable as it can possibly be for your workflow. So if on this Alsys flight, we said this 10 gig is raw data, that's how easy it is to actually rename a volume or a data set that you might have on your cloud servers. Now, as we go through this, we can very quickly see the ports that are open. We can see the endpoint. We can see the size of the machines. We can see a lot of the lower level configuration stuff. So everything we might need to actually use or troubleshoot something that we were doing on those servers. Now, again, going back to what we mentioned in the dashboard, cost was one of the primary concerns we still had with people using the AWS platform. Everyone is a little bit worried that their budget will run away in the nighttime, and that's fair enough. If I click on the monthly button at the top here, it'll just click the tabs for you, and you'll see that we've got a full cost breakdown across your project so that you can see where you're spending your money in the configuration that you have for your project. Now we can see very, very quickly we've got two expensive HPC nodes. We've got a less expensive Docker host here, and we've got a stopped machine over here that we're only paying for the storage to actually keep access to this machine. Now this is really interesting. This is one of those great things about using AWS in this way. If I stop all of these machines, we only pay for the storage across them. So if I stopped all the machines here, we would probably have a resting spend of this project of about $20 per month. The machines will still be here in the same configuration you left them, and they're ready for you to actually fire up at any point you need them again. So if your workflow, if your research workflow doesn't require these machines to be on all the time, or if it has long periods where you're going through your findings, you can actually have an arsenal of machines, a very large arsenal of machines, at the ready for when you actually need them again. So you'll notice in here as well on the expensive parts, which are the actual compute items inside the machines here, we've got a little alert saying, make this much less money per month. Now, we showed you how quickly we get to delivering and consuming AWS, but once we got past that point when we're in the Ronin build, we started to innovate on top of it with many, many other things that will help new users get the best value they can get out of these resources. So this alert here, if you click it, will take you to a product that we call Smart Schedule. Now, scheduling servers on and off to save money is it's a relatively advanced move. You're looking at command line tools, you're looking at maybe serverless items, you're looking at scheduled cron jobs, and there's going to be a lot of troubleshooting to get it right. For a brand new user with no technical experience, scheduling your machine is now only a click away with Ronin. In here, so if we just click the All Business, at 9 AM every morning, this machine will be up and running by the time I have coffee on my desk. And at 5 PM in the evening, that machine will go down, whether I remember to turn it off or not. And just by clicking a machine to be business hours only, we've just made a machine 66% cheaper than it was going to be before, even if we forget about it. Now you can actually fine tune this even further. You can decide if those hours suit. You can say, look, I don't work weekends, and my Mondays are ruined with emails and meetings. And now we've got something that actually suits exactly when we do our work. So I code from Tuesday to Friday, or I do my research on this server. And now we've tuned what would have been a $1,500 machine or thereabouts. Even if I forget about it, we're looking at $277 a month instead. So this helps you take advantage of much larger and much faster machines, but also keeps an eye on your budget and helps you budget accordingly as well. So if you only had $1,000, you might be able to, you would feel more comfortable with 4 of these machines that were scheduled, because you know that would fall in within the budget. So we'll close that down. I'll start to show you some of the other tools that we've built on top of this. So Smart Schedule is one of my favorites that we've done. In here as well, we have a very, very simple workflow for new users or researchers to actually back up their storage as well. So we wanted to make it as easy as just giving things a name. So we'll say, we'll just call this one safety. Safety, that's probably right. If we click snapshot, that is all I actually had to know about backing up the boot drive on this machine. If I go back to the snapshots and I go and have a look in the project snapshots, we will see that that'll become available very soon. But what we've done is we've backed up that drive as soon as that's finished copying. Now, what is great for the new users is they don't need to understand that in the background, Ronin takes advantage of the AWS snapshot technology, which is S3 based. It goes with the 11 nines of durability, the 3 data centers, so that their data is very, very safe. And all they really had to do was give something a name and click the go button. Now, those are also incremental backups. So if they back up this 16 gig 10 times in one day, but they've only changed 3 more gig on that machine, you'd only be paying for the 19 gigs of S3 for that storage as well. So they can back up often in here, and which helps with your research workflow. If you're going to do something bold with your code, it's good to actually know you can return to a state before you set off. In here as well, for snapshots that are already finished being created, here is where you can actually very, very quickly turn that back into a volume that you attach to a machine. So if you're bringing the machine back to a state, you could say, I need to take this back on SSD this time around, and maybe I'll make the size a little larger than 10 gig. We nearly filled it up last time. So it helps you resize your volumes as well. If I close that one down and we go to the storage, much the same in here. You've got the storage that's attached to the machines, a few handy buttons. You're able to rename these volumes to suit your workflow. If you've got data sets that you want to attach, so in this case here, we've got a terabyte on some cold hard drive. If I just hit attach, and we go back to attach volumes, that just attached a 1 terabyte drive to a machine for me. No technical knowledge was really required there. I was able to actually attach this data set, or maybe it's a volume I need to write a data set to, but as you can see, super simple for an end user to just manage their storage themselves. If I go back to our tools, now there are a few other things that we've got in here, and you'll notice down the bottom we have the Terminate machine. So what we do is make it very, very easy to do a proper cleanup of your resources. If you've used the AWS panel and you've gone to the many screens there is to actually get your server up and running or get your result, you'll find you end up with little bits and pieces that just go unnoticed until build time, when you haven't actually been able to clean those things up properly or end to end. The other reason that we've got our Terminate machine workflow here is I like to explain it in a way that the public cloud is a cold and unforgiving place. There is no recycle bin out here. So what we want to do is put a little stage in here to make sure you don't terminate or delete something that is really important. So what we do is we give you a little bit more time and another chance to keep the important things before we actually go through with termination. So in here we might say, I nearly terminated this machine, but this raw data, it's important. Please keep that. All the rest can go back. I don't need the endpoint anymore, and I don't need this boot drive. And we terminate the machine. Now that Ronin in the background goes and cleans up all of the little bits throughout the whole account to make sure that we're back to as clean as possible and as auditable as possible. So if we go back to return to summary, we'll see that machine disappear. Now, there is another one you might have noticed at the very top of this, and this is one of our favorite things that we've actually put in recently, and it's our package machine tool. So we want it to be very easy for researchers to create things and collaborate and be able to share the things that they've done. So in here, what we've done is we've made it as simple as we possibly can for you to package up your research environment and share that or make a reusable version of it so that the rest of your project can actually do something with it from here. So if we said here, this is, say, Mars rover setup. Mars rover software configured. If we went in and we choose an avatar, just so we can find it when we get through the list, when we're looking for it in a list of packages. So find something, maybe we found beetle life on Mars. Now, we've done almost everything we need to do to actually draw a line around this research environment and actually package that up for reuse. Now, down the bottom here, we've got some extra bits that make it very, very easy for you to actually decide how large that package is or what type of package that is. So you can see here we've got the 2 hard drives. Now, if you needed to include your reference data set with the package that you're actually creating here, you can actually decide to include it. And then what you'll be doing is creating a reusable environment with those data sets attached so that if that's required for the next user, that it'll be there already configured, ready to go. This is also very, very good for anytime you're publishing a paper or you're publishing a data set. This is what we think is one of the best ways of very, very quickly and very, very easily creating an environment for reproducible science or reproducible research. If we leave that data set attached and we hit create machine package, it gives you a little warning. It says, I am going to have to reboot this machine to do this. We click go. And that is all you actually had to know to actually create a brand new reusable environment exactly how you left it when you logged out of it last. So the next researcher that logs into this machine will have exactly what you had end to end on that operating system. Now that brings me to a slide that I just want to show. This is what we like to promote as forking your research in Ronin. Now, those of us who are familiar with code and sort of Git repositories, there's a common term called forking your code, and it's where you fork the process into you fork the project into possibly a total different line of thought or outcome. Now, at the top, if you are the researcher who just created that reusable package, I am now free to take that research environment in the direction that I was planning to take my research. But I've also created a point in time that another researcher can take off exactly where I left off and possibly take my research in a new direction, and so on and so forth. So it gives you a way to actually share and collaborate, but also reuse, say, research environments or points in time where you're up to with your research. So we give you a lot of flexibility to actually collaborate in new ways with the Ronin platform this way. So in the background, that machine has been given the instruction to be turned into a reusable image. So when we go to the add a new machine screen that we were on before, in the project packages, we will see that image. It's not quite finished being created, but very, very soon I'll be able to select that and configure it however I like for the very next process. I might just need it because that could be a common job that I do within my research workflow. But if I am a second researcher that I'm just collaborating on, and I might just want to take or try out an idea or try a brand new line of research from this point, we have the ability to do that here. So if I select one of these machines, maybe that top one, I'll choose one that's already selected, already finished. You'll notice that on the right-hand side, the data sets that might have to come with that custom image are here. And what we can do is say, we'll go with rover clone. Now, that's, at this point here, we can now decide what type of machine this comes back as. This could have been, in this case, it was a deep learning workbench, and it could have had great big GPU machines when it was actually imaged. Now you can actually choose from the 90-odd different selection when it comes to the actual machine types, and choose something that suits where you're about to take the research. If you need more storage, you can add it, but the configuration of how this comes back to life is completely up to you. So we're giving you as much flexibility as we possibly can. When you run this up, we knew that this was a Linux machine when it went down, so we know that we need to do some SSH key management for you. And we go back to our machine summary. And it appears exactly the same as all of the other pre-built images. So you can go from the standard set of tools that are given to you. This is for anybody who logs into Ronin. Everything that you've seen so far is the research interface, the self-service portal that we give to researchers. Anyone can go in and create their own images and share them with their team. And anyone can manage them in here the same way that you've seen so far. Now, what I'll also do is I'll just quickly show you guys the storage tab that we have here. Now, in research, obviously there are there's a lot of responsibility to keep your storage in check and also just manage sort of data sets through the workflow. So you'll have raw data, you'll have process data, you'll have published data. What we wanted to do was give you some very, very easy tools here, but we also, again, put a few little protections in here to make sure that really, really valuable stuff doesn't get lost. So you can very, very quickly snapshot a machine from here as well. Now, when you go to delete one of your data sets or one of your volumes, we just make sure in many, many ways. We're even more careful when it comes to this side of things. So we make you type the volume name in. We also default that it will be snapshotted just in case. So what you will have to do is tick 3 or 4 things on purpose to actually delete a volume out of here. And this is just some of the protection we put in here to make sure really valuable or non-recreatable data sets don't just disappear. Now, we've also got some bulk editing tools in here as well. So when you've got a lot of storage or you're managing lots and lots of volumes, you may have to report upon them. So right here, we can see very quickly what the price is. We could sort upon that to see which is the most expensive storage that we're currently consuming. We can also download that as a CSV if you need to report on that and send that to somebody else. And we've also got some bulk edit tools, such as being able to select all of the volumes at once and create a snapshot. Now, we mentioned before that the snapshots are incremental. You can actually back up your whole project, all of the volumes, to points in time in here, and you could do that often if you felt the need to keep your storage safe as you go through. So we've given quite a bit of thought to how some of these extra bits that would make it much easier for you to manage a vast amount of storage for a new user. Now, so that's a lot of the user experience. We've seen how you can collaborate. We've seen how you can create machines, manage your bill, manage your cost on the dashboard. You can get to things like questions and run your community support. The project settings and permissions, so you can actually collaborate with your colleagues by coming across here to the project settings. In here, we can add or remove metadata that makes the project more discoverable, so other people working on Mars things can find us easier. We've got our permissions here, so it's worth noting here that when we fire up a Ronin instance for a university or a large organization, we connect it to your Active Directory and we make sure that all the authentication and the rest is at enterprise levels to meet the security standards of whatever your organization has there. And then down the so you're very easily able to add people at different levels of access to your project as well. So you've got view only, you've got users. Users can actually create servers, snapshot things, delete things. And then you've got admins. Admins can add more users and move users around. So decide on who we collaborate with. And down the bottom here, this is for the people who run sort of shared services inside organizations. We've got 7 fields here that would help us keep this all in check for you across thousands of projects in a single AWS account. Now, we've got a time frame at the top. Projects won't live forever, or at least they will have an end date that you'll have an ability to review what's going on in that project. Things that we have seen customers do is check how much storage projects have and how close they are to an end date. So if they've got 16 terabytes of storage and they end in 1 month, you can actually contact your customers who are in the who are currently running on that project, or whilst that project is still current, and work out a data migration strategy if AWS isn't the final resting place for those data sets. Beneath that, we've got the budget. This is where we set all of the budgetary stuff that you've seen throughout the other screens. Now, on the budget, you don't only get that, that bar at the top that shows you where your current spend's up to. You also get 4 different emails. You get emails at 25, 50, 75, and 100%. So we want you to know as often as possible where your spend's up to, just in case you need to log in and wind things down to make sure you don't overspend. And down the bottom, we've got the funding details. We've got purchase order numbers, budgetary codes, whatever codes are important to your organization. we give you a place to enter them here, and we make sure that every single resource that goes into the AWS environment is auditable back to these things. So for example, if we go back into here and we look for, say, RPID, which is the Ronin project ID, and we look for Mars, we can very, very quickly find the resources in the actual panel itself. Now, this is where we usually like to mention that we're good at breakups. If you use Ronin for a couple of years and it creates many, many environments with many, many resources, and you decide at the end of that you don't want to use Ronin anymore, when we turn Ronin off, everything that you have here will still run as it was delivered beforehand, and the account will be tagged at a machine level. So underneath here, you can see there's a great amount of metadata that's on every single one of these resources, so you can make sense of everything that Ronin put into this environment. Now, that is really important when it comes to billing. But first, what I'll do is I'll just quickly show you guys what the admin view looks like. So it wasn't just researchers that were worried about that overspend or many projects that are going over. So what we did is we built some Ronin admin tools so that people who are running these Ronin environments for an organization have, first of all, visibility across the whole organization, and then a few controls to actually help them head off dangers that they can see now that they can see them end to end. So at the very top, you'll see it's much like the summary that you saw for a single project, but this is across the organization. We can see here that this organization has planned to only spend $3,015 in their budget this year on AWS. We can see where we're tracking on that. We've spent $400. If we want to go and see who's spent the most, we can actually sort the table below and have a look at where each project is up to on its budget spend so far. We can sort by purchase order numbers or filter by those as well. So if we've got a project code we're actually looking for to reconcile, we can do that. Now, we've also got on the right-hand side a couple of fields that were top requested items by IT administrators. One is, first of all, to be able to contact a project owner in a time of need. So we've got the owners for each of these projects here, so you can very quickly contact them if you can see either a budget getting very close to its limit or it's over. And you'll notice on just to the left of that, we have the pause button. Now, what we can do in a scenario where we weren't able to actually contact the researcher, the budget is going well and truly over, and we've exhausted all other avenues, we can actually pause the spending on a project in Ronin. Now, I'll just go to the Mars project where we were. Now, if I pause this project, what it does is it stops all of the machines that are running on that project, but it keeps everything else exactly where it's at. So we do our best to keep everything that you might have safe. But what we do is we take away the most expensive part of your project, which is the running machines. We don't delete them, we don't delete anything. But all we do is we make sure that they're all stopped so that the spend has gone down to a minimum, but a safe minimum. Now, when you click pause as well, you get a warning, obviously, to say that this is going to stop all the running machines. So researchers might lose what's in flight or what isn't completed on the other side. But when you click pause on that and we go to that project, all the users of that project have now been moved to a view-only access. So if we go to the dashboard, and they get a warning in here as well to contact their IT administrator. So what we have here is an ability to stop sort of a runaway train sort of scenario of somebody has a very, very expensive machine. We haven't been able to contact them for X amount of time, but now we've been able to actually stop that machine, and before anything else gets started back up, be it smart scheduled or anything else, we will have the control here to actually be able to resolve the issue and restart the project before the researchers and the project members can actually get back at the resources. So on top of that, as I mentioned before, everything that we put in is industry standard best practice. So we've worked our way up the AWS partner and training side of things to make sure everything we do is AWS best practice, and everything we deploy has that in mind. And by doing this, what it means is everything we put in plays well with other products. So for example, here, we're just looking at the AWS Cost Explorer. So just the one that you get with your account. And what we can do is go in and have a look at the reports, and we can group them by, say, project ID. And what you'll see at the top, you can see who's your primary spend, like in its graphs of whatever sort of flavor that you ask for at the top. But down the bottom here, we've got line items to the cent of spend across these projects. Now, like I mentioned before, we actually tag things with quite a bit of metadata, so you can actually pivot on different types of information here too. So if your finance system actually needed, say, the billing code, you can do a reconciliation against a billing code. There might be several projects that share one. What we do is we try and give you as many options as we can so that you can get through the reconciliation process as easy as possible too. Now, you can change the length of time these reports go for, but this is just one example of what we put in place because we tag things, because we do all the best practice services in the background for everything that goes in. It means that other products that you might have subscribed to, things like Cloud Checker, other types of services that run over your system, they work much better because everything is tagged end to end. Thank you very much for your time. Please do send us emails and let us know if there's anything else you'd like to ask as a question, or if you'd like to see a more detailed demo that suits whatever sort of workflow or research environment you have.
Yep. I actually just answered a couple of questions in the online Q&A portal during the discussion. So, yep. And the last question in particular actually was from Kirk, who was asking about whether or not Ronin is a SaaS portal or actually delivered totally inside their own AWS account. So I've explained that, that the whole thing actually deploys inside their own AWS account, much like the diagram you've got there. Yep. And I guess the other key thing, Kirk, if you're still there and you're listening, the other good thing about that, that we think is pretty powerful about this model, is that because it deploys as an instance inside your own AWS account and it orchestrates things on your behalf inside your VPC, there's a nice lineage there so that it's very loggable and very auditable and so forth. But the other thing about it as well is that if you've gone to the effort with your solution architect from AWS to architect your VPC to meet certain compliance requirements, like for instance, a particular compliance regime around handling private health data or any other kind of restricted data. The cool thing there is that the entire environment carries that governance and that endorsement and so forth, that it's now governed by that regime and it's compliant. And it means that you don't have to ask the Ronin guys to go and get a special audit done of their software to make sure that it's compliant and so forth. So what it means is that you can use this as a tool to manage any of these research environments, and the compliance parts of that are all entirely within your wheelhouse to effect, which is really cool.
Yep, so that is worth mentioning. On every deployment that we do, we work with the customer to do the high-level configuration to meet whatever security standards you have. And what we also do, because we're responsible, because Ronin is the deployment mechanism for these dynamic environments underneath, they all comply too. So every single project that is spawned into existence, they're already had the rules set for exactly what you expect when it comes to your environments. Yep,
and it's really neat. You've got a complete audit trail. You can see who's doing what, when, and where. You can turn projects on and off. You've got an awful lot of control. Plus, it also means that if you've got research software engineers at your university, who are doing work on behalf of the researchers and deploying things for them, they can build packages and package them up inside Ronin, and then all of the researchers across the campus have got instant access to that resource, or all of the people in a particular research area have got access to that resource, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very, very handy tool for integrating all these environments together.
That's
all right.
great.
Well, looks like we've hit the top, and I think we've. Oh, hang on. There's another couple of questions from Kirk, and let's see if we can just knock them off now.
Yeah, that'd be great.
If Kirk's able to stick around. So our org has just finished making its first steps into AWS. So things like VPC structure are being discussed at the moment, but we expect something like Ronin will actually make AWS accessible. Well, hopefully it will. And from a regionality point of view, in terms of data locations, the control is possible, I assume. So data could be in the EU if required. I guess that's going to be a key issue as GDPR comes into effect over here, Nathan. So can you talk to how Ronin works within a region?
Oh yes, absolutely. So that is also part of that security consultation at the start. So if you have sort of sovereign soil type requirements, any of the configurations here, we can either include or exclude types of freedoms that come with actually just having an AWS account. So for Ronin, as you see here in this diagram, if it was, say, it had to be within a country, we can make sure that it only goes to a single VPC in that country. We can make sure that all of the networking that is set up for all of the machine endpoints, the VPNs, anything when it comes to actual access is at a level that you're happy with. So we have, we can whitelist your certain, your approved devices or your approved endpoints, and make sure that the dynamic environments that get spawned know about that as well. So we can go very, very deep into how secure this is, and just make sure that whatever Ronin does dynamically create does hit that high standard if you have those requirements.
Yep. And we've got, so AWS has now got regions live in Dublin, London and Paris and Frankfurt. Yep. And we're about to open Stockholm sometime this year. That's not so far away. So we're actually growing the footprint as we go along. So that covers an awful lot of the EU. You could have Ronin operating for you in any one of those regions. And within any single AWS region, when you place data or you place a workload in a region, it actually stays in that region. So it means that if you're running stuff out of Dublin, it stays in Dublin and never moves unless you actually choose to make it happen like that. So and that's a pretty cool issue. When GDPR comes, there won't be a problem.
Sorry. On top of that too, we do want you to feel absolutely comfortable with the Ronin deployment that we put down. So we will organise penetration testing. We'll organise third party. We've been certified in all sorts of ways already. But if you guys need to run extra tests, or just to make sure that this is as secure as, and do the due diligence on that, we are happy to work with you guys on that as well.
Brilliant. All right. Well, hey, thanks very much to everybody who turned up today. Really appreciate your time. The session was recorded, and so we'll aim to get that up onto a video site soon, right, Nathan, and make it shareable.
Yeah, well, I'll send that out soon with some of the information that we've got in the that we saw today.
Cool. Well, thanks for the Ronin team.
Great.
And thanks from the AWS team. It was a really good afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
No worries. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.